What is up? You are officially on the clock. Welcome into the show. Thank you for tuning in wherever you're watching us, YouTube or any of the social media platforms. Danny Pommells here with Barrett Brooks, the Super Bowl champ, and the Hall of Fame writer Ray Didinger. And it is day 2 of the draft, rounds 2 and 3 in action right now. And the Eagles had the 62nd overall pick and the 66th pick, and they ended up picking back-to-back. Well, how did that happen? Well, they traded out of the 62nd pick with the Houston Texans and picked up pick number 65, directly adjacent to pick number 66. They also picked up a 6th-round selection, 188 overall, and 230, a 7th-round selection. So great job by Howie Roseman once again, getting some value later in the draft. That trade allowed the Eagles to pick back-to-back, as I mentioned. Tyler Steen, an offensive tackle from Alabama, first off the board. Let's talk about him first, gentlemen. He is an interesting case because he's an offensive tackle at Alabama, so he should have a good indoctrination through Stoutland University, Jeff Stoutland, when he gets here with the Philadelphia Eagles. But he started out his college career as a defensive tackle at Vanderbilt, went to Alabama at 6'6", 321. They turned him into an O tackle. He's into the 2nd round of the draft. Let's start with our resident offensive lineman, Barrett Brooks. What do you see from this kid? Are you happy with the selection, or do you wish they had gone somewhere else?
In the 3rd round, I think it's an appropriate pick for him. Needless to say, he's going to have to go to Stoutland University, maybe take a night class or two, get him up to speed and everything. But there's no doubt
got some catching up to do, huh?
Yeah. He has the athletic talent to be a serviceable tackle in the league, or even a guard. He has that type of body type. Strong, big, 6'6", 320, can move pretty well, but he just doesn't have that dog mentality that I saw in most guys leaving, Alabama, like, our guy Landon Dickerson. So he has a bit of work to do, maybe take a summer class here or there, and he'll be cool in Stoutland University. So I look for him to be a guy that's going to be a swing tackle, maybe a swing guard. He's going to get fully indoctrinated into being a multi-purpose type of offensive lineman.
Ray, did you have this gentleman on your board? What do you think?
I did. I didn't have him quite this high. I had him as a 4th rounder, but that's pretty close. I think that, Barrett described him pretty well. He's 6'5" and a half, 325 pounds, which, sounds like a big, powerful guy. He doesn't really play to that all the time. Right. There's not, Barrett, am I right in saying there's not a lot of power to his game?
No, it's not. And that's the problem.
And so you would think a guy who was a starting left tackle on a team like Alabama would be a real power player, and he's not. He's more of a little bit of a finesse player, which isn't a bad thing. His technique is really good. One of the things that I think is an advantage for him, Danny, you mentioned that he played at Vanderbilt before he transferred. He's played 46 games of college football, so he's got a lot of experience, which helps. But I think the key is you're bringing him into a situation here where he's probably not going to have to play right away. And I think that, he'll be working with Jeff Stoutland all the time. They have those Alabama roots together. Dickerson was a teammate. So it's a familiar situation for him. And he's going to have an opportunity to come here and work with probably the best offensive line coach in the business and not have the pressure of playing right away. So, we had said coming into the draft, we had said coming into today and tomorrow that the Eagles are probably going to add a couple of offensive linemen just for depth purposes. You've lost Sayamalu, you lost Dillard. You have to replace those guys and protect yourself. And Steen is a guy who probably shouldn't play this year. I think a year of just learning and being taught would do him well. But he's got the tools to develop into a capable player, and I think he's in the right situation to develop.
We know for sure that Tyler Steen knows these Georgia guys intimately, having played in the SEC and all of the wars that Alabama and Georgia have had over the years. Barrett, what is that like when you get drafted to the same team as a player that you fought so passionately against to win college football games? It has to be like a little bit of awkwardness, or someone has to kind of break the ice a little bit, right?
You know what? It actually works in your favor because you played against the guys, so you know the guys. You're around another team, we don't really know guys, but you played against this guy in a rival college, a lot of time. I had a dude named Sylvester Wright. He went to the University of Kansas. I went to Kansas State. But me and him became real close simply because we're from the same conference.
Interesting.
It was the Big 8 conference back then. Now it's the Big 12. But me and him started hanging out. That was my dude. You know what I mean? We were here for Titan. We battled each other for years at Kansas State games.
So a little bit of that mutual respect.
Yeah. So, you know, it'll because they played against each other, they know each other. You know, if there'll be, you know, a lot of talk with them, they'll get along with each other simply because the ties that you fought against them before. And, you know, that's kind of the same thing.
You mentioned the teammate side. Give us some insight on that. I mean, Landon Dickerson already here with the Eagles, Nakobe Dean, Jordan Davis, just guys who are already here from certain programs. And then other guys from those programs are brought in who they played with. That has to be a great, you know, indoctrination segue type of thing as well.
Absolutely, because you know the guy, you know, blood, sweat, and tears with the guy before, broke bread with the guy. So you know that tightness and that camaraderie is going to be there. You know, it's going to be a smooth transition. You know, for Carter to come in and Jalen Carter come in, and when you look at Smith when he comes in, because they know so many of the guys there, and it's going to be the same thing with Steen. He's going to have that comfortability because he played with Dickerson. You know, Stoutland's a guy that's from Alabama, you know, so that'll have the tie. They've been talking to each other, I'm sure, on a regular. So, you know, now that he's an Eagle now, you know, it's going to be like a smooth transition. He knows a couple people here. He's played against a couple guys, and, you know, he'll be all right going into the locker room.
Ray,
I do find it interesting that you have all of these Georgia guys on the defense, and now you have all of these Alabama guys on the offense. Right. You'll probably have. It's a good thing that they don't have a whole lot of hitting in training camp anymore,
right?
Because that Georgia Alabama thing, if you had guys in pads hitting all the time, it might start looking like an SEC game in the middle of practice. I don't think you want that.
A little
but
bit.
It is. This is kind of what both Howie and Nick were talking about last night. Is they want to bring guys in from winning programs. You know, and you see that with all the Georgia guys and all the Alabama guys. You know, these are guys that all through their college career have thought about one thing, and that's not just playing, but it's playing to win. And the more of those guys you can bring into your locker room, I think it's good for the whole organization.
How much of an imprint do you see Jeff Stoutland's thumbprint on this selection? Do you think he kind of had, you know, Howie or Nick's ear here?
Oh, I don't think there's any question, right, Barrett? I mean, I think Jeff had a tremendous amount of input here because he's still close to the Alabama program, and nobody knows offensive linemen, I think, better than Jeff does. And I'm sure he looks at Steen kind of the way we see him, which is a guy with some potential, but a guy that needs developing and a guy that needs teaching, and a guy that needs to come here and get in the weight room and, frankly, get stronger. And develop the ability to be kind of what you described, which is the swing guy, a guy who can play tackle. He's played tackle throughout his college career, but to come here, he's going to have to develop a little flexibility to maybe move inside and play guard if needed. And he's capable of that. For a big man, he's very agile. He's actually almost nimble sometimes. I mean, his ability to move and stay in balance and his footwork is actually more impressive than his physical strength at this point. So there's something there to work with, and Jeff Stoutland will get the most out of him. And I think, you know, we were looking at them acquiring some young offensive linemen that had those kinds of tools. And this is a little higher than I thought he was going to get drafted, but I think he's a guy that they'll be able to work with.
You know, he's actually, you know, speaking of, you know, Alabama and the offensive line, my left guard that I played with, I was left tackle. My left guard is now the offensive line coach, Eric Wolford, at the University of Alabama. So I'll get a little tape on him, you know, call my boy and see what I hear, you know, what's going on with this young guy.
Okay. Make sure you check out Barrett in every way to make sure you get that information, because don't let him hold on to it for sure. Let's move on to, and I'm setting you right up with this one, Bray, because you talked about here at pick 66, you were evaluating Devin Witherspoon, who went 5th overall to the Seahawks, cornerback, definitely worth the top 5 selection. But there was just a guy who kept popping up on the film, and you're like, who is this kid? And it turns out to be the pick that the Eagles make at safety, Sidney Brown out of Illinois. What really showed up on the tape to you that made you keep taking notice of this guy?
Danny, it was easy. You couldn't not see him. I mean, he was always around the football. And I really was watching the tape to study Witherspoon because there was so much conversation about him. And, maybe before the Eagles decided to bring back both Slay and Bradbury, we thought they were going to draft a cornerback. So I wanted to look at Witherspoon because he had the high grades. But the more I looked at it, the more I kept looking. I said, who is this safety? And it was Sidney Brown. He is an everywhere on the field kind of player. He's the reason he could have been drafted higher. The reason he's not is because he's on the small side. They list him at 5'11". He may even be a little shorter than that, but he's very thickly built, muscular, 210 pounds, and he can really run. I mean, he ran a 4.47, which is pretty good. And the thing that I really liked about him, well, there were two things I really liked about him, was the fact that he was very aggressive. Even though he's not the biggest guy, he was very physical and didn't give anything away in the tackling game. I mean, he came up and he was a really good, solid tackler. The other part of it was that unlike a lot of the safeties in this draft, he's a guy that I think has a lot of versatility. I think that there are some safeties in this draft that you look at and say, well, they're just deep cover two kinds of safeties, or he's just a deep center field kind of safety, or, oh, he's just a guy that can play in the box. But ideally, in the Eagles defense, your defensive backs kind of have to do a lot of different things, and they have to be able to do both of those. And I saw in Brown's game that he's comfortable playing in the box, and he's also comfortable playing the deep safety. So I like the versatility. And the other thing is, in a safety pool that didn't have a lot of what I would call playmakers, guys that were intercepting passes, Brown had 6 of them, and that's a lot. And as good as that secondary was at Illinois, and they produced the 5th overall pick in the draft, when the coaches picked the defensive player of the year in the Big Ten, they picked Sidney Brown. So, I mean, to me, the guy, he's one of these guys that I knew was not going to get drafted super high. But when I look at his game and the way he plays, I just felt like, I don't care where this guy's drafted, he's going to come to the NFL and he's going to play. And the fact that the Eagles clearly have a need at the safety position, to me, this was a very natural fit.
Barrett, all of a sudden your expertise comes into play again, because if I recall correctly, you have a little experience playing with a safety who's about 5'9", 5'10", kind of the long hair,
right,
everywhere, all over the place. And respectfully, I say all of that because if he could beat Troy Polamalu in any capacity, then he would be doing extremely well. But Sidney Brown maybe has some of those similarities.
Troy was just a different being. Troy was like one of those guys, they broke the mold when they made him because he didn't have it all. He just played the game just from, intuition alone. He just would do things you're not supposed to do. But, I would kind of equate this guy to an even more athletic Quentin Michael.
Okay.
He's built, he can go over and line up over the slot and play a receiver that way. Like Ray said, very versatile in his ability to go out there and play in the slot. He can play the deep cover safety. He can also go down and play in the box and blitz and be that thumper in the box also. So, I mean, he's probably like a top 3 or 4 safety in this draft. So this is great value, great money. And I think this is a great pick for Howie Roseman and the Eagles.
All right, so the Eagles get Tyler Steen at 65, offensive tackle, Alabama, who is a bit of a project, and just for his own experience, shifted positions during his college career from the defensive side to the offensive side. So that is, I'm sure, an adjustment he's had to make. Sidney Brown at 66, safety out of Illinois. The Eagles have made their 3rd round selections. We're going to await hearing from these gentlemen, as well as hearing from Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni. Be sure to join us at 11 o'clock with our On the Clock special. We'll recap all that's going on, talk about each and every intricate detail of these gentlemen, starting at 11 o'clock, and we'll go an hour until midnight. Be sure to join us then. Thank you for tuning in right now on the clock. We are waiting to see what happens next and hear from the guys. So Barrett, Danny, and Ray Didinger standing by. We'll see you at 11 o'clock. Thanks for watching.